Hello everybody, how are you all doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about where Nintendo may be going after the release of Tears of the Kingdom. I think that this is an important question to ask and a fun topic to discuss because obviously Tears of the Kingdom is the newest, freshest, hottest thing on the market. It's an incredible game. Every one of us is completely obsessed with the game. It's taking up all of our spare time. And so Nintendo is clearly riding a pretty great high from the release and the attention of Tears of the Kingdom. It is something that I took the week off of work to be able to sit down and enjoy, and I'm playing it every day and putting in a ton of time, and I just find it to be absolutely wonderful. And of course, we will be discussing and covering and breaking down Tears of the Kingdom for many weeks and months and years to come. Specifically on this channel, I do have plenty of video ideas and topics surrounding the game that I do plan on making over the course of the next couple of weeks, and whenever I finally finish the game, which feels like it's going to take me years to do, I also plan on doing not so much a review, but kind of just an overall summary of my thoughts once I've completed the game from beginning to end. But beyond just being a great game, Tears of the Kingdom does seem to represent a potential, and potential is the key word, okay? So don't anyone go crazy without actually focusing to that aspect of this conversation. It also represents the potential swan song title for the Nintendo Switch, and we have been talking about that for a long time, especially on this channel. I've been talking about it since 2023, even before we knew when Tears of the Kingdom was going to come out. The fact that around 2022 or 23, we would see Nintendo hopefully be moving on from the Switch and preparing us for the eventual release of a Switch 2 or a next-gen console. And it's very interesting because back when I first started discussing this topic, and specifically targeting the timeline of 2022 or 23, we had no idea that Tears of the Kingdom would be coming out in 2023. We didn't even know the frickin' name of the game, if I'm being honest. It was still Breath of the Wild 2 at that time, but I definitely felt that around 2023, we might be kind of feeling like the end of the Switch was coming. Or maybe not the end of the Switch, let me rephrase that, because I do think the Switch has many years within it, but I would say the preparation for the next-gen console would probably be happening around this time. And so the main question I want to ask and discuss in this video is, where does Nintendo go from here? Now that Tears of the Kingdom is released, it's still within its first week, but again, everyone is laser focused on it. We only know of one game that has a release date to come out in the near future from Nintendo as a first-party game, and that, of course, is Pikmin 4. The only other game that we know officially that they're working on is Metroid Prime 4, and so with those two games in the future, one we know about, one is still a mystery, and then, of course, everyone feeling like Tears of the Kingdom represents the final huge title for the Switch. We're waiting to see if they're going to reveal any mysteries around the Switch 2. That is the question. Where does Nintendo go from here? So let's focus first really quickly on Pikmin 4, because that game comes out on July 21st, so it's only, just over 2 months after the release of Tears of the Kingdom. Now, Pikmin 4 finds itself in a very unique situation, right? Because Tears of the Kingdom is going to be so massive, and there is just no way that Pikmin 4 could really overshadow the release of the game. However, at the same time, I will say a 2-month window between the release of Tears of the Kingdom and Pikmin 4 is actually a really helpful and sizable amount of time to give Pikmin 4 some good room to breathe. Now, Pikmin, of course, is one of Nintendo's smaller tier and smaller selling franchises, right? So, whereas Tears of the Kingdom represents a great, huge, massive release and probably the last major release, I also think it's worth noting that Pikmin 4, I think, is going to be a phenomenal game. I think it's going to do very well for itself, but it's not going to, like I said, overshadow the massive release and size of what Tears of the Kingdom is. Pikmin 4 is the kind of game that probably will sell, I'm going to guess, around 1 or 2 million copies. I would love if it sold more, and maybe it will, because it'll be the first it'll be the first Nintendo release, I should say, after the release of Tears of the Kingdom. And so people might be more ready for some kind of new Nintendo magic coming off of completing Tears of the Kingdom, or at least the many hours they will have put into the game at that time. Something else I think working in the game's favor is that while it's going to be a smaller tier release and sell much, much less than Zelda, I kind of think that Pikmin 4 is going to operate as a bit of a palate cleanser, so to speak, to the massive adventure that Tears of the Kingdom is, and I really hope that that helps people be more invested and interested in playing the game. I think it'll probably have a lot of newcomers to the Pikmin series simply because it's releasing on the Switch and after Zelda. And I just want to say one more time, as a huge fan of Pikmin 4, I think it is going to be spectacular. I cannot wait for it myself. I think it's going to be like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, just for me as a Pikmin fanboy, to be fair. I'm really, really excited for this game, and so I really hope that it does do well for itself. And again, it's also the only Nintendo game we know being made, developed, and released really soon after Tears of the Kingdom. And then, of course, there's Metroid Prime 4. And man, what do we even say about that game? I think I've probably talked about Metroid Prime 4 more than anyone on the internet has since the reveal of that game back in 2017. And to be honest, I still have a ton of things to say about that game, even though we know nothing about it. But since this video isn't really focused on Metroid Prime 4 itself, the only thing I want to add to about it in this conversation is the fact that it, again, represents a very, very high-profile release that we know Nintendo is currently working on, but it is still so mysterious that it's tough to say how it actually fits into Nintendo's Switch game plan. Coming off of Tears of the Kingdom, the big question surrounding Metroid is when will it release and what platforms will it release on? This has obviously been a huge part of the conversation I've been having about the game, probably going back around 2 or 3 years when I started thinking ahead about the idea of a Switch 2 or a next-gen console around this time in 2023. Now, I will reiterate what I've said in the past. I think there is a phenomenal chance we are going to see that game revealed this year. I do not expect to play it this year, okay, so I think we need to temper our expectations. It's not impossible that it squeezes itself in as a surprise massive holiday release, but I really don't think it's going to happen, and I certainly wouldn't bet on it. However, I do think it is going to be revealed before this year is over. There are signs out there that kind of point to that happening. There have been discussions that have been going around about it, and I tend to think that, yeah, we will see Metroid Prime 4 revealed this year. I still think it's going to release next year and more than likely be a cross-generational release to the Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever that thing turns out to be. Now that is speculation, okay? That's all I'm doing as a fan is speculating, but it's just what I believe and it's what makes the most sense to me. So that brings us back to the situation. Tears of the Kingdom comes out the middle of 2023. We're in the 7th year of the Switch. They've got a very small release with Pikmin 4 coming in 2 months. And then after that, we only know of one game they're making that who knows when it's going to release and what platforms it's going to release on. So when we look at the Switch right now in 2023 and Nintendo's business model, where do they go from here after these 2 games? And honestly, my answer to this is just an excuse to continue discussing the idea of the Switch 2 and the fact that, yeah, I think we're probably going to see it revealed or confirmed officially this year in 2023. There are a lot of vague statements and hints that Nintendo and Furukawa and other folks have mentioned at Nintendo about the next thing that are kind of confirmations, but they're also not actually a confirmation. So I think we will see it confirmed this year and maybe even revealed and they show it to us. And yeah, I think it's going to come out next year, either in the summer or in the holiday next year, which I think will also come with Metroid Prime 4 information. And to me, coming off of Tears of the Kingdom and then the small, tiny little palate cleanser that is Pikmin 4, I think that's Nintendo's future and their path ahead. I don't know what else there is to achieve on the current Nintendo Switch until they go next gen with the Switch 2. Tears of the Kingdom is the swan song title. We all know it. We all feel it. Maybe they surprise us and prove that wrong, but I just don't see that happening. In my opinion, they have to be working on a new Mario game. They probably are working on a new Mario Kart game. We know Monolith is working on a new title that could be a new Xenoblade game or something else. I think a new Animal Crossing and a new Smash Brothers are probably in the works as well. And on top of that, I guarantee you they've got some kind of new IP ready to go for the launch of the Switch 2 as well. Hopefully that is, again, all next year in 2024. But sometimes Nintendo doesn't do what we think makes the most sense, and maybe they plan on really stretching out the Switch, which I think is going to hurt them big time if they do that. Next year is the time to release a Switch 2. Next year is the time to give us a huge title like Metroid Prime 4, which, by the way, I know some people will push back on that, and yes, I'm a Metroid fanboy, but I'm going to stand by it. I think after the release of Metroid Dread and the release and response to Metroid Prime Remastered, with the hype around Metroid and Prime 4 in the future, I'm going to go ahead and call Metroid Prime 4 a big release. Is it massive like a Mario Kart or a Pokemon? No. But is it now officially a big release? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call it a big release, partly because I think it's going to be aided by the hype that's going to come with the new console as well. So that's just how I'm classifying it for now. Maybe things change in the future. Hopefully it doesn't get worse for Metroid, but I think it's only going to get better. And so, yeah, I mean, not much more to say. You know, we're talking about the future. Where does Nintendo go after Tears of the Kingdom? We only know of those 2 titles. Everything else is a mystery. I think Switch 2 will come next year. I think Metroid Prime 4 will come along with it. Probably a new Mario game as well. And so that's what I think for now.